All right, here we are. The NBA playoffs around the corner, and we are going to be your tour guides for everything NBA. I'm Randy Zellea from Back Sports Page. There he is, Lord Ingram, the basketball master, ladies and gentlemen. Got to get that breathing, guys. Wow, the NBA season sort of flew by this year, and I don't know if it's predicted the way we originally all thought it was going to go. But the NBA season is coming to a close in the next upcoming week. And, Bill, we have a lot to talk about, some not only playoff matches to talk about, but my God, teams that are going to make it in the playoffs. I guess, first off, Lord Ingram, how are you, Sensei?
I'm doing well. Kind of like you. There's a few places where I'm scratching my head, but I really don't think the overall picture has changed all that much, especially with the news that Andrew Wiggins is going to be ready to join the Golden State Warriors in time for the playoffs. I think as we look at a kind of a mess in the middle and a lot of parity in the NBA, I'm really not that shocked by the people we're going to be talking about as far as who's going to be there when we get into June.
I got to tell you that Andrew Wiggins has the best deal ever. He signs a new NBA contract and doesn't have to. It doesn't have to show up for.
Let's not make light of it. This is not a Kawhi Leonard thing. There was a serious personal issue going on with Wiggins, and I don't want to slight him or even.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
This was a big deal. This was not load management or some BS like that. But I am just really happy for him, and I'm happy for the team. You get to defend your championship at full strength, and that's what's best for the game. The champs are the champs until they're knocked off. And if they got knocked off without Wiggins, there'd always be kind of a little asterisk saying, well, wonder what they would have done at full strength. Now we'll find out.
Well, not only that, too, but if you look at them, it feels like something was missing with them all year long. I think, Draymond Green is not a third scorer. You're not supposed to be getting 25 points a game out of Jordan Poole. And you're not, and the rest of those guys on this team are not built to score in bunches. Andrew Wiggins, now you see how last season complemented what Clay and Steph can do. And I think now we're starting to see Andrew Wiggins going to come back. I feel like right at the right time for them, wrong time for the Western Conference, because there's some teams right now in the West who I think in their minds are like, we have this thing under our belt, but you don't want to play Golden State in round one.
No, you don't. And I think we've seen some dramatic fall off. Some of the trade deadline stuff that happened strongly impacted the West, I think, more than the East, with the Brooklyn Nets being the aside, because that whole situation went, they were second in the conference, and then what happens with Kyrie Irving happened.
You heard on ESPN when there's news broken, it's called a Woj bomb. Kyrie did a Kyrie bomb on the Brooklyn Nets. He said, just when things are going well, boom.
You're always waiting for that. But what we saw in the West was some significant shakeup and some things that do perhaps impact who comes out of the West, or certainly where you have to go through to get there. But other than that, we're looking at a very familiar cast of characters. We're looking at Milwaukee and Boston being the top teams in the East. There's talk about Philly, and there's talk about Embiid being MVP, and he may get it for political reasons. They don't like to give it to the same player every year, and it's clearly Jokic again. There's no question about that. But does that mean he gets it? Embiid may get it, but on the West, we're talking about the same teams. We're talking about, Denver's looked really, really good in the regular season. Can they sustain that in the playoffs? Maybe this is the year. We're talking about Golden State. We're talking about Phoenix. These are the same guys. Memphis, the same teams that if we rewind back to August to whatever show we were doing then, these are the same teams we're talking about. Some of the players have changed. Obviously, Kevin Durant switched teams. I feel like Phoenix was there. I mean, that's fine. They had Kevin Durant. They were great without him. That's like, maybe their odds of getting out of the West increased 5%. They were already a favorite. So the only team that really has significantly fallen off in that discussion is Dallas, who I thought really was ready to challenge for the West. And then the midseason moves. I mean, oh my God.
9-16 since Kyrie has gotten there. They are 9-16 since
If
Kyrie's
you
gotten there. That's
wanted to put
terrible.
together a how-to of how to destroy a team, Mark Cuban has successfully done that since the season started and into this, and then the trade deadline. This is how you take a team from contending to complete implosion in a way that is totally obvious and clear to everyone else in the league except
But
for
him.
Mark. And I say that I love Mark. Mark, we've been friends a long time. I like Mark a whole lot. I think he needs to pay someone else to be good at their job to run the team, and he needs to get the hell out of the way, or he's going to do to Luka what he did to Dirk, which was make him carry every free agent that's left at the very end of free agency into the playoffs and hope that he might get lucky enough to win a championship one time. Luka's not ready to do that the way Dirk was, but it did take Dirk a while. So, man, a lot of drama, a lot of upheaval, a lot of different storylines. But at the end of the day, aren't we really talking about the same 4 or 5 teams when it comes to the finals?
Well, yeah, and I think too, you're talking about Dallas. Like I said, 9-16 since Kyrie has gotten there, and not only that, but I think the one thing that has also shifted is Luka was having fun in the beginning of the year. You watch him play. There was a game that I was watching at a sports bar. It was actually the Mavs and the Knicks, and the Knicks should have won that game. And Luka sprinkled Luka dust on that game, and they won the game in overtime. And you saw the excitement and the enthusiasm that Luka had about playing basketball. And since Kyrie's gotten there, again, I am not attacking Kyrie Irving. I'm just saying this right now. I am not attacking Kyrie Irving, but it seems like since Kyrie has gotten there over these last 25 games, Luka does not look like he's enjoying what he is doing. And by the way, there is one thing I can compare this to, which can be a huge problem for the Mavericks if they're not careful. And you're going to think that I'm crazy for bringing up this comparison and this analogy, but that's okay. I've been called crazier for lesser things. I think back to 93 with Drazen Petrovic and the Nets. There was so much speculation because he was going to leave because he was not happy. Not that he was going to go to another NBA team, but he was thinking about going back overseas.
Yeah.
And so if the Mavs are not careful, they can turn Luka off enough of the NBA game for him to want to go back overseas. And he'll be just as happy, just make just as much money. If not, make more money because his value is higher for playing here in the United States.
Yeah. The thing with Luka, he's dominant overseas, and his teams are also dominant. In the NBA, it's different. It's harder to dominate the NBA. And Luka, I'll say this in Kyrie's favor, and I was not a fan of the move, as you know. I think Spencer Dinwiddie, if Luka could have just learned how to. Anyway, I think the Mavs had their best stretch of the second half of the season came when Luka was injured and Kyrie was running the show because he knows how to share the ball. He's a true point guard. He does create for other players in a meaningful way, where Luka Doncic gives you James Harden assists. And I say that because James Harden may average 12 or 14 assists a game, but in Houston, those assists were not the kind that they were not Chris Paul assists. Every pass Chris Paul makes is something to the right player in the right place at the right time, that at the right time of the game, that really helps the player, helps the team. James Harden's assists tend to be he's in midair, he's trying to shoot the ball, and he can't quite get the ball launched in the direction of the basket. So he hits somebody else, and they happen to make an open shot. And most of James Harden's assists in Houston were like that. And that's the way Luka Doncic is.
He passes with a purpose. You're passing with a purpose, and I think that's something that Kyrie takes a lot of slack for on how good of a passer is. Look, when you question the game of basketball and the way someone can play, you don't question Kyrie Irving's skill.
No,
you question all the other nonsense that goes with it.
This is what you're with Kyrie. You're waiting for the next scandal. The world is triangular now. He said something to piss off gay people or black people or Jewish people or something. There's something that he does that is detrimental to the team or the league or both. That's the thing. Kyrie is an extremely gifted basketball player. It's just that you're always on the edge of your seat waiting to see how he's going to sabotage his team and himself. with something that he doesn't understand that he's doing.
Well, and that's the thing. It's the unawareness that you scratch your head with him with. Like he came out into the media and when he got to Dallas and he said he didn't feel appreciated by the Brooklyn Nets. Well, do you understand why you don't feel appreciated by the Brooklyn Nets and by their fan base? It's because you gave them agita 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I figure I used the word. Listen, it's Passover time as we tape this, so I figured I used the word agita. But look at the end of the day,
we have to. I mean, let's get everything in there.
Yeah, listen. We'll reference the Easter Bunny in a little bit. I promise. So, with that being said, Dallas has really fallen off. Dallas right now is tied for the last playoff spot, but they don't have the tiebreaker against, believe it or not, the Oklahoma City Thunder, who, if you had told a Thunder fan that you'd be playing for the play-ins spot, you're going to see they would have OKC would have been having a parade in their parking lot that they were talking about having a play-in spot. By the way, got to point this out to you before we get too far into it. The same team that was hot in the beginning of the season that we were sort of gushing over, the Utah Jazz, they are a game and a half out of the final play-in spot. It was only a matter of time that team just talent or lack of talent and rebuild mode finally caught up to them. I would not be surprised if Danny Ainge sprinkles Danny Ainge dust on that team and they end up with the number 1 pick this year. I would not be surprised with that whatsoever. You know what I mean? Like Danny.
What has most impressed me about, and the Jazz are another team that made a big, at the trade deadline, they decided, okay, that's it. They were trying to lose and it wasn't working, so they traded off Mike Conley. Like, what moves do we have to make to start losing? So they traded Mike Conley to Minnesota, and man, Mike Conley's still got some game left, doesn't he? You start to wonder, because in Utah he was good, but his stats weren't what mattered. In Minnesota, his stats have mattered, and man, he's got the Timberwolves playing some good basketball. But I think Danny Ainge, let's blow this thing up. Well, we blew it up. Okay, we're still winning some games. Okay, let's blow it up some more.
Yeah. The thing too is, let's dive into that. Let's go into the Timberwolves for a second. I've never seen a move that was more addition by subtraction than moving D'Angelo Russell. And yep. I like Russell. I think that if you put him in the right situation with the right guys doing the right things, he's a player in this league. The problem is right now, it's just you that Minnesota team, when you have two bigs that need to score and you have Anthony Edwards to go with that, as the point guard, your job is no longer a scorer. And that's where Russell ended up struggling. And he ended up struggling all year this year because of that. So I wanted to get your take on that. On that, I don't want to say that. That's because it's not a debacle. It's just when you make so many different moves, something's going to give. And so he was a big trade piece a couple of years ago, and now you shipped him off to the Lakers, and now he's actually played very well for LA. He has not done anything that was spectacular.
But look, he's under LeBron's thumb. He's under Anthony Davis's thumb. I mean, at the end of the day, you've got veterans and a great coach, and you're under control. Whereas in Minnesota, some of his kind of weird superstitions about witchcraft and voodoo or whatever, all blah, 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 blah. That was all a bigger problem in Minnesota, where they're trying to figure out how to win. Now, Mike Conley has been through the wars. He had to play. He started his career having to fight for a starting position. He and Kyle Lowry in Houston together had to fight. Somebody had to be the starter. Then he came into his own in Memphis when he became a full-time starter, and it was a very tough, very good playoff team with some bigs and some wings, and he had to coordinate the different talent. Same thing in Utah. He could set up a guard, he could set up a center, and now he arrives in Minnesota with all the talent in the world around him, and all he had to do was click to make it work. And Mike Conley, I mean, there's no drama with Mike. No drama. No BS off the court. He's not going to say anything stupid on social media. There's nothing to distract. He's going to come in. He's going to be a leader, and he's going to make the players around him better. And that's precisely what he's done. And as someone who has loved Mike Conley, ever since I worked with him when he was a rookie here in Texas in Houston. I just love to see that his career has had new life breathed into it because he's in a great situation. I don't know how far Minnesota gets. I think their ceiling is pretty low, but seeing him make that team work with the two bigs and you've got the premier perimeter player, like all that stuff is working now because you have the right point guard.
My question to you is: during the offseason, did I look to move one of the bigs? Because it's obviously it's not working.
One thing that when they made that deal, when Minnesota made the deal for Rudy Gobert, gave up everything they got, there were a lot of people that were saying Minnesota is now going to win the West, and I thought in the 90s, maybe when the bigs were still the focus, the Olajuwon Sampson Twin Tower model of basketball. Of course, the Knicks had so many great bigs, and you were trying to put, even the Spurs had Tim Duncan and David Robinson for their first championship. That was a great model, but I wondered how well that could work in the modern NBA when traditional bigs can be a hindrance, and it was a hindrance for a long time. So now, I mean, can you move Rudy Gobert with that contract?
They did it before. Utah did.
Well, Utah did. You never say never. There's always some team that's willing to do something stupid. But I think Karl Anthony Towns may be the piece that has some potential trade value, that he's proven he's not the guy. He's not Batman. He's not. But if you have the right coach and the right team and the right other talent around him, he is a guy who could be an impact player where the expectation is not that he's Batman. So from that point of view, Minnesota, if you could move him and add some more complementary pieces around Rudy Gobert, there's a real possibility there.
But here's the thing, though. So I'm going to use a different team, for example, and I'm just throwing a hypothetical out there.
Okay.
You take a team like the Nets who need a rebounder.
Yep.
That has assets. They have a $19.5 million trade exception. I think it's actually more. I think it was a very high trade exception for the Durant deal. You need a rebounder, if you can find a guy who's going to be able to score, wouldn't you take your shot with Gobert?
And the Nets have lots of guys who can score. In fact, what if it was? And now Bridges is a free agent, right? At the end of the season.
No, they have another year. They have one more year.
Oh, one more year. Okay,
one more year.
How about that? You can play Bridges at the 4. You can play him at the 3.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, they have Claxton, who's been playing very, very well for them.
Yeah,
he's a double and leads the NBA in field goal percentage. Keep in mind, most of it's dunking, but
that's how you lead the league. You get real close to.
I guess so. Yeah, that's how you lead the league. That's how you lead the league in field goal percentage. You just sit there and rebound and dunk all day.
Yeah.
But I think that it's something to watch though with Minnesota, because obviously Towns was out majority of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Towns literally has been on the shelf since
tons of injuries, tons of games missed due to injury. Anthony Towns missed like half the season, didn't he? He was out a lot.
He's been out since Christmas. He's literally been out since Christmas, and that's Minnesota. I don't really want to spend too much time on the Thunder, and that's nothing against Thunder fans. It's just, what this is. You're still rebuilding. I think they have 237 more first-round draft picks to go. All the deals.
Like, Holmgren had a full season to work with the trainers, some of the best. I mean, we've seen the Thunder. Sam Presti has a hell of an organization, not just the players and the draft picks and all that, but they know how to develop talent as well. So you're going to get him in after a full season of working out with NBA trainers, getting ready for an NBA game. And you've already got arguably the best young point. I mean, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a lightning.
He's the real deal.
He's waiting to explode. So I think you give them another high draft pick, and wow, I mean, or 2 or 3. How many draft picks do they have?
I think it's 237.
Look, 5 years from now, I could see the Thunder and the Magic in the finals, and I could see it being a really incredible matchup. Couldn't you?
Well, do you remember when they first came to Oklahoma City and they were losing games, and Scott Brooks kept on saying, "This team isn't losing; they're learning."
Yeah.
That's what this team is still doing right now. They both, Orlando and the Thunder, are learning right now how to play and how to let. Like, I watched that Orlando Magic team. I watched them against the Nets a couple weeks ago, and
Mm-hmm.
they came out and they just ran up and down the court. They're playing together, they're passing, they're celebrating together, and that's what you need. I think the Thunder was trying to hold on to something when they had Westbrook, and even after Durant left, they were trying to still build around Westbrook. But when they had, after that NBA Finals team and Harden left and then Serge Ibaka got traded and all these different things that happened in that franchise, they are proving that sometimes you just have to press the reset button and be bad for a couple of years. Obviously, there's some markets
I feel like the if, and I know why they didn't re-sign Harden. I totally get it, but I think that group right there, and what over the course of the NBA, in the history of the NBA, there have been a lot of teams that you wish, man, could we have just seen them? Imagine if they could have just played 2 or 3 more years together, how good Harden, Westbrook, and Durant would have been with Ibaka and Perkins, and they had a lot of talent around those guys too. One of the big regrets to me is not getting to see that team mature together, and I totally get why they did it. But now, 5, 6, 7, 10. How many you started now that those draft picks are starting to materialize and develop, and it's like, okay, you blew up something good, but it's going to turn into something good again if you can keep them together.
Well, my question to you back at that time, we didn't know James Harden was going to be the scorer that he was.
Mm-hmm.
They eventually turned into. At that time, everybody looked at that move with the Thunder and said, look, you're getting more out of Serge Ibaka. You're getting rebounding, blocking shots. You're getting a big man, which at that point in time are not as conveniently able to get at that point in time. There's as much as I do, there's a lot of guys in this league who when given the opportunity, can do what James Harden does, scoring bunches of points.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. So in my eyes, the Thunder did the best move that they could. Obviously, you would love to have a situation where you can just, keep all of them and run the table as many years as you can. But after a while, you have to keep paying all those young guys. They keep coming off those rookie contracts.
Yep.
So jumping off of we spent more time on the Thunder than I thought we were ever going to. Look, I think if you have to really look around certain NBA teams and you have to give like an MVP award to a player on a team, I think the New Orleans Pelicans really don't appreciate Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum as much as they should. Because Zion Williamson, and I remember saying this to you when he got drafted. I said, Zion could be a star in this league as long as he stays healthy. He has not stayed healthy in this league.
I've never seen anybody miss so many games with a freaking hamstring. And how many games can you miss with a freaking hamstring? I've had hamstring injuries. I know they're pain in the leg, but
hamstring.
My goodness, like for real, you missed 40 games with a hamstring. Okay, but Brandon Ingram, since he came back, he was out, of course, for a while too. Since he came back, the Pelicans,
yeah.
They're back on the rise, and they look very, very good, and they're beating some good teams, and they're winning in a big way with Brandon leading the way. And I think that's one of those guys that when the Lakers dumped him, I thought, man, you're going to regret that down the road. And look how great he's been since he came back from injury. If Zion were to come back, I mean, the Pelicans, weren't they second in the West? Or they were
they were number one.
Number one.
And when November came to a close, the Pelicans had the best record in the Western Conference.
Yep. And unlike a lot of those November bubbles, everything was clicking the way it was supposed to click. And then the injuries, here they come. But I think even now, the Pelicans are in a position to cause some problems in the first round. I don't know if they could get out of the series, but they're certainly going to make it difficult. They're not going to be an easy out.
My question to you is, when you comes up to negotiation time for Zion Williamson, are you putting contingency clauses in that contract, as many as you can, before the Players Association comes out to you and says, you can't do that?
Don't you have to? Games. You've invested so much in him, and he just can't stay on the court.
Well, it's funny. We're talking about that. And I'm sorry for cutting off, but you heard a couple of days ago they were able to come to a labor agreement, like the yeah.
Mhm.
I think that's something that really should be addressed. Is hey, if you're not playing, you should be. You have to play X amount of games to get a bulk part of your salary.
Yeah, but I think there's another part to that too, and it was interesting. Maybe you saw the interview with Damian Lillard talking about why he misses so many games and why they've he's off for the season now and all this, and he said it really wasn't his choice. He said it's the trainers. We have so many advanced stats now, and they're predicting that, oh, this could be an indicator of a possible injury somewhere down the line, so we've got to sit you for 5 games so that this little metric number on this little computer screen over here doesn't flash red and indicate that you might miss some. Oh my God, really? The guy wants to. Can't a guy just play basketball? I mean,
so what you're saying is NBA 2K is deciding who's playing and who's not playing.
I mean, it seems to be like if a guy wants to play through an injury, why can't you play through an injury? It doesn't mean you're going to break your leg down the line. It means you want to play. And the idea, so many fans are paying so much money to see marquee matchups.
Oh, we started on that.
And 2 or 3 of the marquee guys aren't even in the game. By the time the game starts, the game's over because the key players aren't even playing.
Well, you heard what Anthony Edwards said during NBA All-Star Weekend, correct? Where he said he found the All-Star game to be a joke this year because guys are not playing during the season, and look, there was. I think you and I have had this conversation before. Jeff Van Gundy, who I consider to be one of the smartest men in basketball.
Yeah.
He came out and made a comment about play-in tournament and saying the NBA is looking for things to help make the regular season more interesting. Well, he said, you know what? If you want to make the NBA regular season more interesting, make the players care about their season. The fans don't care because the players don't care.
That's right.
That's really what the problem is right now.
And
the fact of the matter is, if the players came out here and treated it like they wanted to be here, it would mean a lot more.
That's right. It's all about the playoffs, right? We don't care. And the new CBA has a mid-season tournament in it. Like, really?
Yeah, I think that's ridiculous.
You won the mid-season tournament. Okay, who's even going to? Isn't that going to be when all the players go, oh, load management, right? Who cares about the mid? So what?
Listen, it's bad enough they didn't care and they had to change the rules of the All-Star game for making it East versus West. Did I
stop caring about it? I don't even know who's on the teams anymore. I don't care. Remember when pride in being the Eastern? You're representing the Eastern Conference. Now you're representing Team LeBron. What? Okay.
Well, not only that, but then having the players get chosen by the team captains. Like,
I mean, look, I get that I am not the target audience for a lot of things. I'm just not. I get it. We're about the same age, and the new target audience for movies and music and all this stuff are not things that you and I care about, except occasionally there's a sequel to an Indiana Jones movie, and then you better listen to us. But generally speaking, a lot of the stuff that's going on is not targeted to our age group. It's targeted to kids. Do kids really want to? Is there a demand for a mid-season tournament in the NBA?
No. Look, are you telling? So they're going to have a mid-season tournament like on a Tuesday or Wednesday night when you don't have people going to NBA games as it is. So you want them to care about a mid-season tournament on a Tuesday night when they're not even caring about. Like, I'm one of the few people who will watch a Nets-Pacers game on a Wednesday night during the winter because I'm a fan. You want to watch what your team is doing. And by the way, that Nets-Pacers game that I'm talking about, Kyrie sat, Kevin sat, the starting the top 8 guys. They basically played the D-League team down 25, and the Nets still came back and won. I don't know what that doesn't say much about the Pacers. But
I'm the guy who sits at the Astros game and wants to watch every stat and every pitch and every hit and every bunt and every defensive shift because I love the game of baseball. And baseball is doing this too. They're making it so that a lot of the stuff, a lot of the tradition, the stories, the history matters so much in sports. It's all about the history. It's all about the legends that got us to where we are. We love to talk about this game and that, and Nolan Ryan and Mike Scott and Hakeem Olajuwon and these great players of the past who did these amazing things, but we're creating a game where those things don't happen anymore. And the stats don't matter. And we've juiced the ball, and everybody's hitting 60 home runs now. That used to be hard. All these things we're doing that.
I'm going to give you a different example, and I think one that you'll appreciate more.
Okay.
I went to the Nets game with my boys, with my kids, last Friday night.
Okay.
Nets were up 54-50 at halftime, and I was showing them the big scoreboard with all the team stats. I'm like, this is why this is happening. The Hawks are still in this game because they're rebounding, but they're 3 for 15 from the 3-point line. The Nets are 12 of 24 from the 3-point line, so this is why they're winning.
Yep.
But if you look at the rebounding numbers, Atlanta's out rebounding them. So that's why Atlanta's still in this game as much as Trae Young is struggling and this and that. I said, if they come out and they all of a sudden start hitting some shots, the Nets are going to be in trouble because the Nets are not rebounding the ball. What ended up coming out in the second half, the Nets 3-point shooting not only kept on going, but the Nets started rebounding the basketball a lot better. And they ended up out rebounding. They were down, I think, 9 in the rebound at halftime. The Nets were down 9 in the rebounding department. They came back and they won the rebound department at the end of the game by 13.
You know why, right?
It's because they played.
The coaching staff was in the locker room having the same conversation with the players that you were having with your boys.
Right.
Guys, and the ball. Right.
Well, and I told the kids too, don't fall in love with the 3-point line like the NBA players are doing, because it's crazy. We've got so off track of what we were talking about, and that's okay. Hey, so we were just talking about the Pelicans. The Lakers and the Pelicans are tied for the 7th spot, and they're both of those teams are a game back from the Warriors for the 6th spot. We're automatically in. Man, Andrew Wiggins, like we were just talking about, can't come back at a better time, because God knows we do not want to see a 7-game series with LeBron James, because I don't know if I'd be able to handle a playoff series where LeBron James, when he doesn't get a call, starts looking at the referees and has that face on it where he's just complaining to the official. I don't know if I can deal with it.
Not as bad as Luka, but yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny, we talk about the trade deadline and what happened with the Lakers. You have to give kudos to Darvin Ham and the job that he's doing with that team. But that problem is that team is in a win now spot, but their team is just not good enough to win right now.
Yeah, and obviously D'Angelo Russell coming back to LA, that's a better fit than Russell Westbrook was. Of course, you and I have talked ad nauseum about why Russell Westbrook couldn't fit there. And with Paul George going down, Russ he has a huge role to play with the Clippers. And the other night they were going to just let him shoot the ball, and he was hitting his shots, and they win. And I think there's a real role for Russell Westbrook there. Westbrook's a great, amazing, all-star player, triple-double waiting to happen. It just wasn't not with the mix of talent that was with the Lakers. So there's some determination, there's some grit. Anthony Davis is healthy. The Lakers will be a handful, but can they really make any noise in the West? I don't see it.
I don't see it happening either. And this is the part where everyone gets to beat
him in the series is going to get hurt. That's just what's going to happen. He's going to be a Coke out of the machine. It's going to hit his toe, and he's going to be out for 4 games. That's just
we call that the norm. We call that the norm. And I'm not meaning Norm from Cheers either.
Norm.
I'm just
Norm.
No. Okay.
About Anthony Davis. No.
you know what matchup in the first round of the playoffs is going to be very, very interesting to me. It's going to be the 4-5 series. No matter who it's going to be. Yeah, the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns either versus the Clippers or the Warriors. It's going to be interesting to me. Again, we have so much time left in this last week. You have New Orleans and the Lakers tied for the 7th spot, and the Warriors and the Clippers tied for the 5th spot. But the Pelicans and Lakers are also a game back of the 5 seed. So as of right now, the Clippers do own that spot. Look, kudos to Ty Lue. Okay, Ty Lue must have a bottle of gin and Jack Daniels at his desk at the end of every single game, saying, "I can't believe I made it through the lineup that I had on the floor." But he's like, "Oh my God, I had Kawhi for 5 straight games. This is amazing."
That's a real accomplishment right there.
Yeah.
I hope we don't see the one matchup. I hope we don't see in the 4-5 seed is Phoenix and Golden State, because I think those are going to be the 2 most fun teams to watch in the postseason, assuming everyone's healthy. Yes, Kevin Durant. I'm looking at you. Yes, Chris Paul. But especially Kevin Durant. The dude literally gets injured in shoot around and misses. Okay. Anyway, those two teams, if everyone's healthy, I think they match up so well. We want to see Chris Paul play Steph Curry. We want to see KD play Andrew Wiggins. We want to see these matchups. This is a potential marquee matchup that would be great for like the Western Conference Finals, but we won't get that. But I'd hate to see it in the 4-5. That would be it'd be like you're spoiling it too early. Because those are the two teams, and that's the matchup that everybody, I especially, will be like, man, I can't wait to watch those teams go.
Yeah, I'm very flexible. Whoever Phoenix plays in round one, if you're a Phoenix Suns fan, you're just sitting there saying, "Come on, KD, don't hurt yourself before then." But
Yep.
you
All
learn
the
just
out of the locker room, like nothing to slip on.
KD was taking his shoe off, and the shoe landed on the other foot the wrong way, and he's now out for 6 to 8 weeks.
He sprained his ankle pulling his shoe off. I mean, yes.
Yeah, he was having a sandwich and he bit his finger, and now he is on the injured list for the next 6 to 8 to 10 weeks. Come on.
They gave up their depth at the position. Like you can't really sustain without KD because of what you gave up to get him. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't with him.
No.
It's funny too when he's on your team. Like when he was with the Nets, you become very apologetic for a player.
Mm-hmm.
The apologetic ends when you see him get hurt and shoot around.
Yes.
You cannot be apologetic for the man anymore. So we're talking about the Phoenix Suns. This is obviously the last grasp for Chris Paul at the bottom with Kevin Durant. You're going to do everything you can to try to make this work. There's no guarantees it's going to happen.
And they want to replace Chris Paul with Kyrie Irving in the offseason, and
because it works so well in Brooklyn.
But for whatever reason, and of course, we don't know for sure where the disconnect was. The disconnect was not between Kyrie and KD.
The disconnect was with management and those two.
Management. It was with Ben Simmons. It was with James Harden. It was with blah, 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 blah. Whatever it was. But in Phoenix, you have a great head coach. You have a great front office. The team is run well, managed well, coached well.
Well, the front office thing, we'll work on it.
I'm not talking about the owner, but but they have good. They make the right roster moves. You've got Ayton to do everything, all the dirty work down low. You've got shooting. You've got star power. Yep. You've got. What's missing? Phoenix is the complete package. So if you're Kyrie Irving, aren't you looking at that? Now, if I'm the Suns, just like the Mavs, okay, but when does Kyrie do something really stupid? Not if.
How you gonna handle? Yeah, no, it's not what if, it's when.
So, and I love Cameron Payne. Cameron Payne he's the reason Chris Paul has been able to play the whole season. He can shoulder a lot of the load, but he can't be your starter for long term.
No.
Great backup. One of the best backup point guards outside of Malcolm Brogdon, who's really a starter. But yeah, he's helped Chris Paul a whole lot. If that's the move they make, Kyrie's really interesting in Phoenix.
So here's a valid question for you. A real valid question for you. If you look at these top three teams, Nuggets, Grizzlies, Kings,
yep.
Who do you think has the advantage to really make it to the final out of those three?
Well, it's not the Kings. And I all due respect to the Kings, and Mike Brown he's coach of the year. I don't know how anybody else could possibly win coach of the year. He established a culture, and the Kings have gone with it, and they've been fantastic. And hey, that's what you want to see in the NBA. Every NBA fan should look at that and go, yes, that's good for the league. But when it comes to the playoffs, you've got to have experience winning big games. And the Kings don't have. Mike Brown does, but none of their players do. So I think that is out. So it's going to come down to Denver and Memphis. And then let's look at who's got the toughness advantage. You've got to be tough to win a playoff series too. And my God, Memphis is, it's like a street fight, and some, not necessarily in a good way, but obviously John Morant is facing some issues, and Dylan Brooks is very street, but at the same time, that can give you the edge in a playoff series. And Jokic is not, he's an amazing player, he's MVP, he's incredible, but who's the tough guy? Who's the enforcer? who's going to be the villain that, makes the difference with his grittiness and his toughness and makes the opposing fans hate him because he's just making those intangible, toughness plays. And there's about 4 candidates for that in Memphis, and there's really not one in Denver. So I think this is one of those teams, and maybe they'll prove me wrong, and that'd be great. It'd be fine with me. I love Jamal Murray. I love Aaron Gordon, Jokic. They've got a lot of really good, not only good people but good players. But who's going to give them that chip on their shoulder? Where in Memphis, everybody in the freaking locker room has a chip on their shoulder. So
I've never seen a locker room so anxious to want to fight. It's like they bring out boxing gloves to the court, and what they do is they drop their gloves. They're like, "Yeah, all right, who wants to fight?" And they're like, "Dude, it's just tip off." It's like what are we doing? It's hard.
That might just be if it was Memphis and Denver. That's the difference. Now, I do think the one team that all that toughness and all that stuff is like Luke in The Last Jedi. Brush the dust off your shoulder. Is Golden State. Hey, we've been there. We've done that. That's great that you're tough. We're gonna kill you with our 3-point game.
Yeah. That's how we. That's how you win it in that sense. Couple more on the Western. Well, like you just said, it's not the Sacramento Kings. I think Sacramento Kings out of the 3 teams, those top 3 teams, most vulnerable to get knocked out in round 1.
That's just experience. That's all it is. Nothing. It's not. They don't have the talent. There's nothing else. There's no knock on the Kings. The Kings have had a great year, and they'll be back there next season. It's just the experience factor. Every young team that gets there for the first time, they always get thumped, and they come back with the experience they need to not get thumped next time.
And then moving over to the Eastern Conference, look, Detroit, Charlotte, Washington, Indiana, and Orlando, all out. They've all been eliminated. You already know the 10 teams that are going to be with the play-in and so on and so forth. Now it's just seeding. The Knicks clinched the 5th spot earlier in the week. Look, Atlanta, Toronto, and Chicago, with no offense to them, they're not here to be disruptors.
No.
Chicago had higher. Well, no, I don't know if Chicago had higher expectations. I think maybe last season Chicago played above what they really are, and this year we got to see what they really are. Toronto is well coached, and then you and I had a conversation privately about what's going on down in Atlanta. There's a lot of buyer's remorse, and there's also change within the team coming. So out of those 3 teams, who's your best opportunity? Because one of them is going to play in the top 8. Out of those 3, Chicago, Toronto, and Atlanta, who's going to be there?
It's Toronto. You have the best coach of the 3. Atlanta threw Nate McMillan under the bus and then proved that it wasn't him. Like, oh, great. You fired a really good coach. I'd love to see him in Houston next year. But I think with Toronto, the only issue they have is that Siakam has not become Batman, and they really thought he would. But they have so much talent, and they're so deep. And Nick Nurse is such an incredible coach, and they're gonna fight down to the last second. And of those 3, I don't see that kind of fight coming out of Atlanta or Chicago. I just don't think it's there. Of those 3, I'll take Toronto every time.
Right now, the battle for 6 between Miami and Brooklyn. Nets either get a win or a Miami loss. The Nets are the 6th seed. I think, man, I will tell you, Miami got old real quick, didn't they?
Yeah, they did, and we called it.
Yeah, we called the beginning of the year. Something happened during that playoff run last season where it just didn't work. Yep. Something happened in that Eastern Conference Final Series, and Miami hasn't been able to get it together since. And
was asking for a trade in 4, 3.
and look, I follow the Brooklyn Nets pretty heavily. I was at the game last week. I was talking with a couple different people. I got to tell you, this became a very hateable team with Kyrie and Durant to one of those underdog, let's root for them teams because, look, let's forget about the fact that a lot of their wins came here with those 2 All-Stars here, but they won some pretty big games. They beat Denver in Denver. they went out and won some pretty big games. And this is a pretty Jock Vaughn's a good coach. You have a nice mix of veteran talent. The only thing that's missing, and I think that we can say this about a lot of teams in the league, they're missing that number one guy.
Yep.
Mikal Bridges is not a guy you're sitting there saying, I'm going to build my team around him.
Nope. No, you're really not. I don't know if, he's a young player, but he's not that young. We kind of know who he is. He's your number two guy, and they don't have the number one guy. Miami has the number one guy, although Jimmy Butler, towards the end of his career now, is he going to be the number one guy consistently? Doesn't have the support. So if that were to be, you're talking about between those two teams, I like Brooklyn because what you mentioned, coaching, talent. There are some guys who have stepped up since the trade deadline, since all that turmoil. They're starting to feel each other, and you do have a lot of different guys who can step up. And I think neither of those teams is going anywhere, but I think Brooklyn is intriguing for that reason because you've got youth, you've got vitality, you've got coaching, Jacques Vaughn, of course, played with San Antonio, came up through the Spurs, and that's all about strategy and understanding situations. And I think he'll put the right people in the right place at the right time to maybe even win a playoff series.
Yeah, I said this before. I know the Knicks clinched the number 5 seed, and I think that Thibodeau is going to wear out his welcome any day now. But because when you have Julius Randle fighting with guys on the bench, it's not going to work out well. But with all that being said, if the Nets would have finished at the 5 seed, I think they easily could have knocked out Cleveland.
Yeah, you have to look at the fact that Brunson missed a bunch of games, and they struggled, obviously, the same way they struggled last year without a true point guard. Brunson's been just exactly what the Knicks needed. And now that he's back, they're going to kill somebody in the first round. I just believe the Knicks are, whoever it is, they're going to win the first round. And it's not going to be a 7-game series either.
By the way, just got this message from the New Orleans Pelicans. Zion Williams medical update. Dave Griffin announced the following update on forward Zion Williamson's. After further evaluation, it has been determined that Zion Williamson will continue his rehabilitation and conditioning regime. We will continue to monitor his progression, and update will be provided as warranted. Also known as
Christmas, maybe.
Yeah. We'll see him in the beginning of the 23-24 campaign. One last thing with the Nets, I will say what makes it more intriguing is the fact that they got draft capital in both trades. For both Durant and Irving. They have a huge trade exception. They have guys coming off of contracts, and they have money to play with.
Yep.
But the reputation that Joe Tsai has as a general manager, as the owner of the team, Sean Marks has a great reputation because he's a good general manager. But the reputation that the owner has, and the word because players love KD and they love Kyrie as players.
Yeah.
They're going to listen to what they said about being in that Nets organization and what that might hurt Brooklyn's chances of going out and landing big name free agents. They would have to trade for someone.
Yeah.
And we all know when you have to trade for someone, you're sort of putting somebody in there who might not want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's going to be Brooklyn's Achilles heel in the short term. I think in the long term, it was for the better. And it's not going to be like what happened when you had to move Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Brook Lopez, and all those people where now you have to be irrelevant while the salary cap situation clears itself out. They have that. So they're in a much better situation. So they're going to be competitive. Next year, I think they'll be competing for the same 4, 5, 6 spot or a play-in spot with this roster. If they keep this roster the way it is. Joe Harris has 1 year left on his deal after this season. Seth Curry is done at the end of this season, and he's already made it clear. I'm going back to Doc. I'm going back to Philadelphia.
They're not using him anyway. He's getting 4 minutes.
Yeah, well, not only that, but he, that's his father-in-law, and he'd rather be with his father-in-law than be in Brooklyn. So we just mentioned the Cavs. Something's still not mixed right. I guess with Garland and Mobley and Jared Allen and then you have LeVert coming off the bench. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell. Something's not mixing right.
Yep.
I guess you want Donovan Mitchell to be Donovan Mitchell, but you also don't want Donovan Mitchell to be Donovan Mitchell for the sake of hijacking the team.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that Donovan and Garland, they're both incredible talents. They both can score at will. I'm not sure that together they work that well. And we've seen that a lot of times where, look at Dallas. Kyrie is an amazing scorer and Luka's an amazing scorer, but together they don't look that good. And sometimes that just doesn't work. But the good news is, say you want to move on from Garland. There's a lot of teams that would love to have him. You need a floor general. You need a playmaker. And there are a lot of teams that have those too. So these are easily remedied things in the offseason by a front office that knows what they're doing, which the Cavs do. But what it means for this postseason is you're going to see some impressive stats from individual players, especially Donovan Mitchell, who does need to prove himself in the postseason and has done some in the past with the Utah Jazz. But I think the reason they don't get past, they might get out of the first round, but the reason they don't get past that for sure is lack of floor general. Too many cooks, right, in the kitchen. You don't have the floor general that is the final ingredient, like Mike Conley has been for the Minnesota Timberwolves. We talked about. You need the right point guard to make all that talent work, and I think it's easily found. It's going to take the offseason to do it.
Yeah, and I also think that the Cleveland Cavaliers too. Look, this is the best they've been since LeBron. All times since LeBron. And you won 50 games this year. Nobody thought that was going to happen.
Yep.
Good for them.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, one thing with the Knicks, they've won 5 in a row, and they're doing it without Julius Randle. Julius Randle, I remember when Julius first went to the Knicks, and there was a team that was struggling. Julius Randle was the guy who sort of set the tone, saying, "Hey, look, I'm going to come here even though this team is not up to par."
Mm-hmm. They tried to move him at the trade deadline. They already know.
For the last 2 years. The last 2 years, they tried to move him at the deadline. They would have done it last year. They would have gotten a better deal. And then, obviously, you have the class of the Eastern Conference, the Sixers, the Celtics, and the Bucks. And the Sixers are the wild card in this situation, in my eyes, because because James Harden, you don't know which James Harden is going to come up. Is he going to be the one that blows up the team, or is he going to be the one who helps the team become the champions? You just don't know what he's going to be.
Yep.
Is the window of Embiid being a number one guy running out?
Well, the problem is Embiid is a number one guy in a different era. Now, granted, he's got the extra dimension that a modern big man needs, the 3-point shot and all that. And otherwise, he's Olajuwon with a 3-point shot. Although Hakeem did have a decent 3-point shot, they just in that era you didn't ask him to do it very often. But
no.
In fact, it was more to what the team needed. He would hit one.
But it was more taboo back then than it is now.
Yeah, absolutely. They wanted you in the paint. But, Hakeem did hit a big one in front of Bob Hill to beat the Spurs in the playoffs one time. But, yeah, that's not where they wanted big men to play. And Embiid can play anywhere he wants to play, and he's an incredible talent. But I think, with Philly, you have some really nice pieces around him that are not being maximized. And number one is Tobias Harris, in my opinion.
Agreed.
So I just feel like Philly, James Harden, I've never been a fan of his, even, being the Rockets guy, and everybody in Houston they're talking about him coming back. And I'm like, nah, I've had enough. Thank you. But I think when it comes down to it, when you see what Boston's going to do to him defensively and what Milwaukee's going to do to him defensively and what they're going to do to the rest of the Sixers, I don't think Philly can beat either one of those teams in a 7-game series. And I'm not sure anybody can beat Milwaukee. It would take Jason Tatum, and we talked about this last year in the playoffs. Jason Tatum really became that guy up until the NBA Finals. He was incredible. He was the star player. And then the finals started, and he choked big time.
The moment got too big for him.
Exactly. Now, that's what happens. Most players go through that. The first time you go to the finals, that's what generally happens. Is this year now the year that Tatum says, okay, the finals are mine too? And if so, Boston's deeper and better than any team in the league. But if Tatum is not ready to make that step and they're still trying to figure out whether he or Jaylen Brown are the star player, I got news for you. Milwaukee, everybody on that team knows their role, and Giannis is unstoppable, and they have the best coach in the Eastern Conference. And Milwaukee, I can see Milwaukee in the finals very easily. I mean, it's hard
I think
to see
so.
not. The only way they're not is if injuries strike, and that's always the case with any team.
Listen, I think that Milwaukee could be in the finals also just because of the way how balanced out their team is. But I think that having Lopez and having Giannis there, having the bigs, which is what the last 3 seasons I've said has been the Achilles heel of the Boston Celtics. They're not deep with rebounding. When during the NBA season, you can get away with Al Horford shooting threes,
Yes.
and doing what they're doing right now. When it comes to the playoffs, though, and you're playing half-court basketball, if you have a guy like Lopez and you have a guy like Giannis rebounding the basketball, the Celtics don't have a shot unless they need to be hitting their shots all the time.
Yeah, and that tends to be the thing that falters in the playoffs, especially the deeper you get. Shooting tends to go, and you've got to have that rebounding. Yeah, I agree. And look at those games. There were a lot of games where Giannis was out, and they still won, and they still beat good teams. And guys like Brook Lopez had big games, and there's a lot of experience there. There's a lot of big game experience there, and that's the thing that makes Milwaukee, to me, just incredibly lethal. Now, can they beat the Golden State Warriors or the Phoenix Suns? That's a problem for another day. But can they get there? Yes, absolutely.
I'm going to name a couple players real quick who had really, really weird seasons, and you let me know if they're changing addresses at the end of the year.
Okay.
Ben Simmons.
Well, I mean, do they want to move him? Of course. Is anybody going to be willing to take him? What the heck is up with him anyway? He doesn't really want to play. It's like Kawhi Leonard with even less desire to play every game. And man, how do you bring that onto your team? I just don't. So on the one hand, would the Nets move him for stock our Coke machine for the season? Yes, they would. Is any team going to be willing to stock their Coke machine to take on Ben Simmons?
No.
It seems like there's always somebody that says, well, we have the right coach and the right system and the right players to really maximize this guy, and we're going to take the risk to do it. But Ben Simmons is really going to test that.
This is a name that's going to be very, very interesting.
It is me. I don't want him. I don't want any part. You're not sure if you want to play it? No thanks.
What about Christian Wood?
It's interesting. Christian Wood, now, there was some in-depth analysis done by a writer here in Dallas. It was either the Star Telegram or the Dallas Morning News one of the legit sources, not a blogger, breaking down why Christian Wood isn't starting and why he's fallen out of favor in Dallas as well as Houston and Detroit, and and it's because he is not attentive on the defensive end. You can't trust him to guard his guy. You can't trust him to run the right play, be in the right place at the right time. But let me tell you something. If you go look at every Dallas Mavericks box score from this season, the vast majority of the games, he is in the plus, on the plus-minus column, which is my favorite stat, as everyone that watches this regularly knows. He's almost always in the plus. He rebounds. He can score from anywhere. He will even block a shot once in a while. I don't understand. Now, Jason Kidd is not a good coach. He's not a great coach. He's not even a good coach. He's not even a passable coach. If you've watched the Mavericks, and if you watched the Bucks when he was there, if you watched the Nets when he was there, Jason Kidd is not an NBA head coach. He's just not. And
no.
Okay, a lot of great. Maybe Steve Nash isn't either. Steve Nash hasn't had as many opportunities to prove it, but Jason Kidd is not. And I feel like if you were a good coach, and Houston does not have a good. Well, they have. It's hard to say if Silas is a good coach. They don't have the talent. But if you put Christian Wood, a guy who's always positive in the plus-minus, who shoots the ball incredibly well from everywhere, who can drive the lane and dunk, who can shoot the three, who rebounds well, doesn't a good coach maximize that talent? I love Christian Wood. Like, he's on my 2K team. He's fantastic. He's great. So I feel like Christian Wood in the right situation he's your number 3 guy. He's somebody who will rebound and shoot and hit big shots and all these things, but you got to have the right coach and you got to have the right number 1 and number 2 around him. Dallas doesn't have any of those things. So I like Christian Wood. I think he's going to get paid somewhere, and it's not going to be Dallas. But the next stop, I think, will finally be the team where he arrives as a legit presence in a game. Not the guy, but a key piece of a champion, of at least a playoff team.
This is one that I'm looking forward to asking about. It's not even because of his contract, because I think he's locked in for another year or two. But see if they'll move him. Spencer Dinwiddie.
Look, you know this. I love Spencer Dinwiddie. I totally disagreed with the Kyrie Irving trade because I was like, look, Spencer Dinwiddie has great floor vision. He's an extremely capable scorer. He can give you 40 points on a given night. He can also give you 12 or 14 assists on a given night. His passes matter. His passes are the Chris Paul kind of passes. He makes the team around him better. The problem he had in Dallas, and you look how quick Brooklyn was to say, we'll take him back. Thank you very much. You know why? Because he's great in the locker room. I had a couple of opportunities to speak to him here in Dallas, and I was really, he sees the game in the way, an incredibly like esoteric, intellectual, studies the game. He sees it in a way that a lot of players don't. He communicates the game in a way that a lot of players don't. And if I'm building a team and I can have any young point guard in the league that I want, I mean, man, Gilgeous-Alexander's number 1, but not far behind him. I'm not worried at all if I land Spencer Dinwiddie. If I'm the Nets, I lock him up long term. I've got my point guard. Thank you. Now, we still need a number 1, but I've got my point guard, and in the modern NBA, that is critically important. Brooklyn is set there as long as they understand it, and they seem to. They've acquired him twice.
Yeah. I think they also too, as far as the only thing that I was looking with the Nets now too is locking up and playing some of their young guys. They have Cam Thomas, they have Cam Johnson, both guys. They're good scorers.
No, you're going to move one of those. One of those is going to get moved to a team that needs to hand him the ball and say go. Houston, maybe. There's a lot of teams that can use that.
I think they want to keep Cam Johnson because he's battle tested from his time in Phoenix, whereas Cam Thomas is on his second year. But the problem with Cam Thomas is he's a scorer. He doesn't play defense, but he's also 20 years old.
You can teach him. That's coaching. You can teach. You can't teach scoring. Scoring, you can do it or you can't. But defense is all about effort. It's all about coaching. It's all about determination. And you can teach defense. You can't teach scoring.
When you score 120 points within 3 games, you want to keep that guy in your wheelhouse. Why he's not playing right now?
Logjam. Well, it's logjam. That's it.
Yeah, but do you want to clear? Do you want to find a way to get him in? Okay, here's the best example with him, and I'm sorry that we're doing too Nets heavy right now, but we on TNT they had a game with the Nets and the Bucks. The Nets were down 28. They bounced all the way back to being down 2. Yep. Cam Thomas didn't play in the first half. He came out and played in the second half, and he scored 21 points in the second half.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Because you want him to get past the Jeremy Lin factor. You want coaches to see him. You want him to face adjustments, and you want him to have to make those adjustments and see if he can still play. Jeremy Lin was amazing for 10 games, Lin sanity and all that. And then the All-Star break happened, and the scouting reports caught up, and then he became the same player he was prior to that, which was a good, not great player. And you have to find out, who is he? Is he once coaches have scouted him and defenses have made their adjustments and they've got tape and they're doing what NBA coaches do to adjust, can he still do it? And if he can, wow. That's something. And if he can't, you need to know that.
But my question with that is, too, he's still doing it.
Yeah.
He's still coming out and he's still doing it.
But they're sitting him. So you were asking, should he still be playing? And I think, what are you doing? I mean, you're not going to win a championship. You wouldn't even be in the play-in. You wouldn't even be in the playoffs if it weren't for all those games you won with when the stars were in and out. That's why you're there. But you're really still you put yourself at the same level as, say, Oklahoma City and Orlando, you need to know who he is. You need to find that out. Now's the time, so that you understand what you need to do in the off season. It's a missed opportunity to me.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole entire thing. Bill, I'm glad that we were able to take everybody on a little tour of the NBA, like only we can do. We'll try and be back next week, and we'll see if we can get a guest on with us so we can continue our NBA talk. The only person I don't want back is someone who's going to yell at me about trying to raise the age limit in the NBA. That's
So Nancy Lieberman, no.
Nancy Lieberman will not be on the show next week.
Well, next week we'll actually have the playoff seedings in hand, and we can start talking about who goes where, who goes
I think it's going to be very interesting, the playoff situation. If I had to say to you one thing that would be different from the seedings that we have right now, what do you think it would be?
Well, let's pull up the seedings. Right now we have very few. Most of the seedings are actually pretty secure. The East is going to look the way it looks. The play-in is virtually Chicago. Orlando's not going to make it. We know the teams that are going to be in the playoffs in the East. In the West, you have room to question. Dallas or Oklahoma City. Utah is not. It's not going to be Utah. Utah is not out of the picture mathematically, but it's not going to be them. They've lost 3 in a row. Ainge finally made enough moves that they're losing like he wanted them to do. So is it going to be the Thunder or the Mavs? And I got to tell you, there's even been noise that Dallas was going to sit Luka and Kyrie for the rest of the season, which then they didn't do it last game. But I think the Thunder are so tough. They've got chemistry. They've got everything, going their way. And Dallas has so many problems. Now even Mark Cuban's coming out and painting this other picture of the Brunson, which we all know was not true. Like, there's just so much mess in Dallas.
I think if Dallas not making the playoffs is the biggest shock of the NBA season.
And I think at the trade deadline, they did it to themselves. Completely did it. It's the knife to their own head. They did it to themselves. So I think Oklahoma City gets in, and then when you look at whether it's going to be the Clippers, the Warriors, or the Lakers in that 5th seed with those 3 teams, even the Pelicans are in that discussion. I think it's the Warriors. I think getting Wiggins back, even though I don't think he's going to be back for the last regular season game or whatever, him being there, being on the bench, and the team knowing that he's going to be there when the playoffs start, you get a huge emotional lift from that. I think the Warriors are going to be locked in and grab the 5th seed.
Yeah, and I also think Andrew Wiggins is going to come out and, be. It's going to be a relief. It's going to be a relief for him to be back out there.
To focus on the game and put all the personal stuff and be in the zone. I think. Yep. I think that the Warriors are. Hey, if you try to count out the Warriors, you're going to be really sorely disappointed.
Yeah, don't count out Steph Curry. He's been doing this for a little while. He has a resume of wanting to score 80 to 90 points at a time. So you just let him get him go and do his thing. Hey Bill, this was fun. Let's do this again next week. Let's dance again. We can always do that if you want.
Absolutely.
Excellent. For Bill Ingram, I'm Randy Zellea for backsportspage.com, the Hardwood Huddle. Let the playoffs begin. I'm excited. For Bill Ingram, Randy Zellea, we'll see you next time here on The Huddle.